I often hear game designers say things like, find the fun, and
Make sure that everything is fun.
which is excellent advice, but almost nobody explains where the fun actually comes from. It's a lot easier to find the fun if you know where to look. In this video, I'm going to show you the psychological mechanism behind fun and how you can use it to design better games. And once you see it, you'll start noticing it everywhere, in music, comedy, movies, and every type of game. Like, why is it fun when you roll a natural 20 in D&D? Or when the dealer flips over the river card and you've got the nut flush? Why does it feel amazing when the beat drops in a song? And why does a punchline make us laugh? All of those things are powered by the same psychological mechanism: anticipation. Now, you and I might have differing opinions on the things that we find fun, but I propose that what fun actually is can be defined in very simple terms. And once you define something, you can conjure it at will. Because when you really drill down at its most basic level, fun is a byproduct of anticipation. That means that if you can manufacture anticipation, you can also manufacture fun. This is important to understand because if you're designing a game, you obviously want people to find it fun. You want them to keep playing that game. So we need to learn how to inject more anticipation into our games. Now, obviously, games aren't the only things that people find fun. This idea of fun as a byproduct of anticipation actually applies to many parts of our everyday life. And if we learn from those, we can apply them to game design in a lot of new and interesting ways. One of my favorite examples of this is music. A lot of the songs that resonate most with people are all about building and releasing anticipation, or you might also call it tension. You remember the song In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins? It's a 5-minute, 37-second song where the first 3 minutes and 41 seconds are very stripped down instrumentally. But it's not boring. It has an ebb and a flow to it that gradually builds. And whether you realize it or not, it creates this feeling of anxiety and anticipation. It keeps building and building until that famous drum fill that everybody loves. In fact, I'd be willing to bet that that was the first thing you thought of when I mentioned this song. And one of the main reasons I think that drum fill is so memorable is because it is such a cathartic release of all that anticipation that had been building up throughout the entire song. And the byproduct of that release is fun. But maybe you're more into EDM. Let's say you're at a rave. What's the part of a song when everybody goes crazy? It's when the beat drops. And why is that? Because before the beat drops, the song builds higher and higher and higher, and you keep anticipating when it's going to drop. And then when it finally does, it breaks that tension and you have fun. Now let's leave the dance party and go to the comedy club. What are the building blocks of a funny joke? The setup and the punchline. We find jokes funny essentially because the setup builds anticipation and the punchline relieves it. During the setup, you're anticipating where the joke is going, but then the punchline hits and breaks that anticipation. Interestingly, the same formula that makes comedy funny is essentially the same formula that makes horror movies scary and fun. Think about a classic monster horror movie like Jaws. Throughout most of the movie, you never actually see the creature in full view. You only see brief glimpses or indirect effects of it, and that builds anticipation. I think this is why Jordan Peele was able to transition so seamlessly from comedy to directing horror movies. That skill of creatively withholding information and misdirection as a way to build and release tension is extremely transferable. So let us transfer this thought process to games, because anticipation is everywhere in game design, no matter what type of game it is. Designers of casino games are absolute masters of this. Just look at the slot machine. When you pull the lever, you can see the reels spinning, and then they begin locking into place one by one. That brief moment of waiting builds anticipation at a micro level. You might see one 7 lock in, then another 7, and suddenly you're anticipating that you might win big. When that third wheel locks into place, it relieves that anticipation. That's a lot more fun than just pressing a button and instantly being told if you won or lost. Now, obviously it's more fun if you win, but playing a slot machine once is just a micro dose of anticipation. There's also a macro level of anticipation, because even if you didn't win this time, you still see the jackpot at the top of the machine. And you got close this time, right? You anticipate that you might win next time. And that is how you get people feeding slot machines for hours on end. But that's just one example. You might not find gambling fun because you don't like losing money, which is totally fair. And this is where stakes come in. Stakes are what you stand to gain or lose based on a particular outcome. And depending on how much you value those stakes, determines how intensely you'll feel the sense of anticipation, and in turn, how much fun you can have. If you don't find gambling fun, that just means that the stakes of that system don't suit your taste. But fundamentally, the same reason that some people do find slot machines fun is the same exact reason that you would find a different game fun. Because at the root of both of them, they're both using anticipation to produce fun. Notice how at the beginning of this video, I didn't say that fun is anticipation. Fun is the byproduct of anticipation. That means that if you take that same formula for building anticipation and recontextualize it with different stakes, you can appeal to completely different audiences. Take video games, for example. We can see anticipation at both the micro and macro level of video game design. Think about abilities that you have to charge up. It takes time and effort, all while building anticipation, which is then relieved in a satisfying way when you finally get to activate the ability. Even better if the animation itself builds anticipation, like gathering magical energy around you before releasing it in a massive blast. Now let's say that kills the enemy. Now you feel anticipation again as you go to loot it or open the chest. You're excited about what might be inside. And when you finally get that item you've been chasing, it relieves all that anticipation. In Tetris, you can see the pieces slowly falling until they snap perfectly into place. In Mario, you hold your breath a little bit as you jump through the air, waiting to see if you'll stick the landing. I could go on and on. What's crazy is that it works best if you're not even aware this is happening as a player. But you can bet the designers have thought about it, either intentionally or intuitively. I know for a fact that some of the best game designers in the world can create fun purely based on instinct. For example, Gabe Barrett is a board game designer and host of the Board Game Design Lab podcast, and he wrote a book called Find the Fun, where he interviewed game designers from across the board game industry about how they create fun, including Rob Daviau. Rob Daviau is the co-founder of Restoration Games and is considered the godfather of modern legacy games. He's created some of the most popular games such as Pandemic Legacy, Cthulhu Death May Die, and the new Stranger Things board game. And in the book, Rob says this: "I don't know how to answer any of those questions. I can't define fun, but I know it when I see it. That's about all I got. Fun is a weird thing. I find cooking fun, but I hate gardening. I find it fun to watch baseball, but not soccer. I find snow to be fun, but I hate shoveling. Some people like playing Sudoku forever. Other people find it fun to shoot digital people with a digital gun. I can't figure out a way to parse fun. I tried." And obviously for him, that's enough. Rob Daviau makes incredible games. I'm not at all saying that you're destined to make bad games if you don't think about the science behind fun. But I know for some people, it probably would be helpful to think about it in these more concrete terms. What's happening when you feel anticipation is your brain begins releasing dopamine. Now, dopamine is the chemical that rewards your brain for doing something that it perceives as beneficial. So when your nervous system has learned from past experiences that what you're doing is likely to result in a reward, it motivates you to keep going. And that motivation is what we experience as anticipation. Your brain expects a reward, your brain likes the reward, so it pushes you to continue. And when that outcome finally happens, the anticipation is resolved, and one of the possible outcomes of that is fun. This is why we pop the little bubbles on bubble wrap and wrap our Christmas gifts in wrapping paper. It's the same reason we watch magicians and aerial acrobats and tune into a TV show that ended in a cliffhanger. It's all about building anticipation. So if all of those things use anticipation as the process to produce fun, then why are there some things, in fact, many things, that some people will find fun while other people don't? Well, this is where it gets a little too philosophical for the purposes of this video, but I would argue that if there's something that you don't find fun, but other people do, it's probably because you just don't buy into the stakes of that system. If you're not that interested in what there is to gain or lose, then you just won't feel that sense of anticipation as strongly. And if you are not interested in those stakes, then I would think it's most likely because you just haven't had any past experiences that have trained your brain to associate that process with a reward. That would explain why you'll hear so many different opinions on what types of activities people find fun, because all of our past experiences are inherently very unique. But at the risk of getting too deep here, let's bring this back. How can we apply this to board games? Fortunately, there are already countless mechanics in board game design that create anticipation. Let's start with the basics. Rolling a die is one of the most ubiquitous board game mechanics. Shaking up the dice and rolling them across the table creates a small moment of suspense and anticipation while you wait to see the result. This is one of the core mechanisms that generates fun moments in tabletop role-playing games. When you roll, you're hanging on that moment, but only if there are stakes attached to it, like knowing there's a chance of either a critical success or a critical failure. This applies to any form of surprise at the micro level. Drawing the card off the top of the deck, flipping over a tile, anytime hidden information is revealed. Each one can become a tiny moment of anticipation. But eventually those can get repetitive. So that's why there should also be additional layers of anticipation with appropriate stakes. Those small moments are really just there to keep players engaged so they can experience the larger moments. The next layer is often what's called the tactical layer of gameplay, where you're anticipating what's going to happen in 1 or 2 turns from now. In a competitive game, you might feel anticipation about what your opponent will do on their turn. You might feel a sense of tension as you try to determine whether or not you have enough actions or resources to execute your plan this turn. If we look at one layer above that, we find the strategic layer of gameplay, where you're pursuing long-term goals. Maybe you're trying to complete a big quest in Lords of Waterdeep, or fulfill a long train route in Ticket to Ride. Striving toward those goals builds anticipation over the course of many turns, as you wait to see if you'll actually be able to pull it off. At the same time, if a game only builds anticipation slowly toward one final moment, players might get bored before they even reach it. When you look at it this way, the games that keep players hooked and are often regarded as the most fun are the ones that maintain anticipation at multiple levels simultaneously. Even small moments, like rolling a die or flipping over a card, can train the player's brain to expect future rewards and larger payoffs. So the next time that you're playing or designing a game, anytime that you need to find the fun, Try thinking about it in these terms. How is the game building and relieving tension? If the game doesn't feel fun, is there something that's undermining that sense of anticipation? Maybe you need to increase the stakes so that players can feel the impact of their decisions more. Really just think about all the ways that you can inject more anticipation into the experience. And then once you have found something that creates anticipation, try fiddling around with different stakes and timing until you found something that really vibes with your game and target audience. If you do that, I think you'll find that the game very quickly becomes a lot more